Officer James Mitchell rubs his tired eyes as the clock on his patrol car dashboard blinks 11:47 p.m., another graveyard shift in the quiet suburbs of Maple Grove, where nothing ever happens except tonight would be different. The radio crackles with a concerned neighbor's report about strange noises from 247 Maple Street, making him sigh as he pulls up to the darkened Victorian house. The autumn wind whistles through bare branches, casting strange shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn. Everything about the house screams normalcy, from its freshly painted shutters to the carefully arranged flower pots. But something makes the hair on Mitchell's neck stand up. Maybe it's the complete darkness inside, unusual for this time of night, or maybe it's the slight movement of the living room curtain that catches his trained eye. Approaching the front door, Mitchell notices the luxury cars in the driveway, a Mercedes and a BMW, both spotless. Both speaking of wealth and status. He knows this is Dr. Evans' house, the prestigious surgeon everyone in town respects for his work saving children at Metropolitan Hospital. His flashlight beam sweeps across the welcome mat, revealing scattered pieces of mail, as if someone had been in a hurry. That's when he sees it, a tiny finger no bigger than a pencil poking through the mail slot, wiggling desperately, trying to catch his attention. Mitchell drops to one knee, his heart suddenly racing as he leans closer. "Hello," he whispers, fighting to keep his voice steady and professional. A small whimper responds, followed by those three devastating words, "Mommy won't wake." Mitchell immediately calls for backup, his training kicking in. Even as his mind races through possibilities, he tries the door handle locked. He peers through the window, seeing nothing but shadows and silence in the expansive foyer. The finger disappears, replaced by a crumpled piece of paper pushed through the slot with trembling movements. Unfolding the paper, Mitchell finds a child's drawing done in purple crayon, showing stick figures, a tall one holding something over a cup, while a smaller figure watches from behind what looks like a door. The details make his stomach turn, especially the careful labeling in childish handwriting. "Daddy medicine, make mommy sick." Sirens wail in the distance as Mitchell makes a decision that would later be scrutinized in court. Kicking down the heavy wooden door sends echoes through the quiet neighborhood. Inside, the house smells of lavender air freshener, masking something else, something medicinal and wrong. A small figure darts from behind a leather armchair. It's Emma Thompson, 8 years old, in her blue nightgown, clutching a teddy bear with one eye. Upstairs, he finds Caroline Thompson unconscious on the master bed, her breathing shallow, her skin pale. Next to her on the nightstand sits an elegant teacup with dark residue. At the bottom beside it, a leather-bound notebook filled with precise handwriting documenting symptoms and reactions like a scientific experiment. Mitchell hears the garage door opening downstairs. As backup arrives at the same moment, heavy footsteps sound from the home's back entrance. Dr. Richard Evans appears in the doorway, still wearing his hospital scrubs, his face a mask of concern that doesn't quite reach his eyes. He rushes to his wife's side, playing the role of desperate husband perfectly. But Mitchell notices how his eyes dart to the nightstand, checking the cup, checking the notebook. Emma clings to Mitchell's leg, her small fingers digging into his uniform, whispering words that chill him to the bone. He does it every night when he thinks him sleeping. Evidence teams would later find the hidden camera Emma had placed in her favorite teddy bear, recording weeks of footage showing her stepfather carefully measuring clear liquids into her mother's evening tea. They would discover his detailed records of slowly increasing dosages designed to mimic terminal illness. They would uncover offshore accounts and life insurance policies. But in that moment, all Mitchell sees is a terrified little girl, finally brave enough to save her mother with three simple words that would unravel a doctor's deadly scheme. The night air fills with flashing lights as ambulances and police cars crowd Maple Street. Neighbors in bathrobes gather on perfectly trimmed lawns, watching as Caroline Thompson is wheeled out on a stretcher, while Dr. Evans protests his innocence in measured tones. Emma walks beside Officer Mitchell toward his patrol car, still clutching her teddy bear, her small face showing relief even as tears stream down her cheeks. Sometimes Mitchell thinks the smallest voices speak the loudest truths, especially when they come through a mail slot on a quiet autumn night. The mahogany doors of courtroom 304 groan under the weight of expectation as spectators squeeze into every available space. Reporters fill the back rows, their pens hovering over notepads, eager to capture every moment of what the media has dubbed the poisoned princess case. The morning sunlight streams through tall windows, casting long shadows across the worn carpet, where Emma Thompson takes small, careful steps toward destiny. Her blue princess dress sparkles in the harsh fluorescent lights, a gift from her mother who now sits in the front row, still pale, still recovering, but alive thanks to her daughter's courage. Emma clutches her teddy bear, the same one that captured the damning evidence, its missing eye now a badge of honor rather than a defect. Officer Mitchell stands at attention near the bailiff, his usual stoic expression softening as the little girl passes by, remembering that haunting night 3 months ago. Dr. Richard Evans sits at the defense table, his posture perfect, his silver hair immaculately styled even in custody. His $1,000 suit speaks of wealth and privilege, but something has changed. The careful mask of concerned stepfather has begun to slip around the edges. His manicured fingers drum silently on the table as his stepdaughter approaches the witness stand, his eyes following her every move like a predator watching prey. District Attorney Sarah Martinez approaches Emma, her heels clicking softly against the floor as she helps the child into the oversized witness chair. Emma looks tiny in the massive wooden seat, her feet dangling inches above the ground, her teddy bear clutched tightly to her chest. The courtroom holds its collective breath as she raises her right hand to swear, in her small voice, clear and steady, as she promises to tell the truth. Dr. Evans' lawyer Maxwell Richardson adjusts his red bow tie, a nervous habit, as he watches his client's perfect defense strategy teetering on the edge. Everything depends on convincing the jury that this child, this innocent-looking 8-year-old, fabricated an elaborate tale, but even he seems unsettled by the unwavering certainty in Emma's blue eyes as she faces the crowd. Carolyn Thompson grips her sister Jane's hand so tightly her knuckles turn white, watching her daughter prepare to testify, her wedding ring now absent from her finger, leaving a pale band of skin like a reminder of deception. She thinks about all the nights she drank that special tea her husband insisted would help her sleep, never suspecting that each sip brought her closer to death, while her daughter watched in silent horror. The jury leans forward, 12 faces fixed on Emma, as she settles into the chair, her small fingers straightening the skirt of her dress, just as her mother taught her proper appearances matter, her stepfather had always said, his voice echoing in her memories, along with the sound of clinking glass and measured breathing as he mixed his deadly cocktails in the kitchen late at night, thinking no one could see. District Attorney Martinez starts gently asking Emma to state her name and age for the record. The child's voice carries through the hushed courtroom. My name is Emma Rose Thompson, and I'm 8 years old, and my stepfather tried to kill my mommy. The last words tumble out unplanned, sending gasps through the spectators, causing the judge to bang his gavel for order. Dr. Evans' mask cracks just slightly, a twitch at the corner of his mouth, revealing the fury beneath. Photographs appear on the courtroom screens, showing the evidence. Emma gathered her crude crayon drawings of medicine bottles, dated and hidden under her mattress, the teddy bear's camera footage playing silently in the background. Dr. Evans in his home office, measuring clear liquids, his careful notes spread across his desk, his voice a soft murmur as he documented his wife's declining health night after night. Emma points to the screen, her small fingers steady as she describes each scene, her vocabulary shifting between childish innocence and startling medical terminology picked up from years of living with a doctor. He said mommy was weak, but he was making her weak. He put the medicine in her tea every night at 9 exactly when Frozen comes on TV, so I started watching from behind the door instead of in my room. I knew the song Let It Go meant it was time. The defense team shuffles papers nervously as Emma continues her testimony, describing the hidden vials she discovered in the garage behind old paint cans, the times she pretended to sleep while watching through cracked doors, the way she learned to use her mother's phone to record video after watching a crime show on TV, her resourcefulness belying her young age. Dr. Evans' perfect facade crumbles further with each word, his fingers now gripping the table edge hard enough to whiten his knuckles. Officer Mitchell watches from his post as the little girl who whispered through a mail slot now speaks with quiet determination to a spellbound courtroom. He sees Dr. Evans' composure shatter as Emma reveals the final piece of evidence. She gathered the small notebook hidden inside her teddy bear, where she wrote down every time her stepfather made the special tea and every time her mother got sicker, proving a pattern that not even the best defense attorney could explain away. Detective Sarah Chen shifts in her seat at the back of the courtroom, her sharp eyes taking in every detail as the digital screens flicker to life, displaying 3 years' worth of hospital security footage. She remembers the countless hours spent reviewing these tapes frame by frame, searching for the pattern that would reveal Dr. Evans' deadly routine. The footage plays in chronological order, showing Evans accessing the hospital pharmacy at odd hours, always when the regular pharmacist Susan Martinez was off duty, always during the quietest moments of night shift. The timestamps create a perfect timeline, matching each instance of Caroline Thompson's mysterious illnesses. Chen glances at the jury, watching their faces as understanding dawns. These weren't random hospital visits, these were calculated steps in an elaborate plan. Assistant District Attorney Michael Torres stands before the evidence table lifting sealed evidence bags containing small glass vials found hidden behind a false panel in Dr. Evans' work locker. Chen remembers the day they discovered them, her team almost missing the hiding spot until Officer Mitchell mentioned Emma's drawing of her stepfather reaching behind the cabinet, the memory of that crude crayon sketch leading them to the most damaging evidence yet. The prosecutor's voice fills the courtroom as he explains the chemical analysis of the vial's contents, a complex cocktail of untraceable toxins designed to mimic natural illness, carefully measured doses that would slowly destroy Caroline Thompson's body while leaving no obvious trace. Dr. Evans sits straighter, his clinical gaze fixed on the evidence, backs his expression that of a man examining test results rather than instruments of attempted murder. Security footage continues to play, showing Evans in his office late at night, hunched over medical journals. Chen had found those same journals in his home library, pages dog-eared and marked specifically on chapters about rare autoimmune disorders and unexplained organ failure, the perfect cover for his crimes, marking him as both brilliant and monstrous in his methodical approach. Chen takes the stand, her testimony steady as she walks the jury through the investigation, beginning with Officer Mitchell's late-night discovery. She describes the search of Evans' hospital office, revealing a hidden USB drive containing detailed notes about his wife's declining health, written with the cold precision of a research paper rather than the concern of a loving husband. The evidence mounts as Chen presents pharmacy inventory logs showing discrepancies that appeared minor when viewed individually but formed a clear pattern over time. Specific medications gone missing in amounts too small to trigger automatic alerts, yet when combined could create the deadly cocktail found in Caroline's system. Evans watches Chen, his face impassive, but his hands betray him, fingers twitching slightly as each piece of evidence tightens the noose. Caroline Thompson sits straighter in her wheelchair as Chen describes the breakthrough moment when they discovered Evans' offshore accounts, paper trails revealing life insurance policies worth millions, all taken out in the months before her mysterious illness began. The jury members exchange knowing looks as financial records show large transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands scheduled to complete upon Caroline's death. Photographs appear on screen showing the hidden camera setup in Emma's teddy bear. Chen explains how the child had positioned it perfectly to capture the kitchen counter where Evans prepared the specialty, her young mind understanding instinctively that she needed proof. The technical analysis of the footage shows Evans measuring liquids with scientific precision, adding them to his wife's evening tea, following the same ritual night after night. The courtroom grows tense as Chen reveals the contents of Evans' personal laptop found in his hospital locker, encrypted files showing years of research into undetectable poisons and their effects on the human body, browser histories revealing deep dives into cases of other doctors who had poisoned their spouses, some caught, some never discovered. Evans had studied them all, learning from their mistakes, ensuring his plan would be perfect. Detective Chen concludes her testimony by presenting the most damning evidence of all the journal found hidden in Evans' home office, detailing every dose, every symptom, every hospital visit, written in his precise doctor's handwriting, documenting his wife's slow descent toward death with the detachment of a scientist observing a lab experiment. The final entry, dated the night Officer Mitchell responded to Emma's cry for help, shows a single-line experiment terminated prematurely due to unforeseen variable. Evan's composure finally cracks as Chen reads from the journal, his carefully maintained facade slipping to reveal a flash of rage quickly masked, but not before the jury sees the monster beneath the distinguished doctor. Exterior, Emma, watching from her mother's side, squeezes the teddy bear that started it all, its missing eye somehow seeming to stare directly at her stepfather as the truth of his crimes unravels thread by careful thread in the hushed courtroom. Defense attorney Michael Brooks stalks across the courtroom floor, his Italian leather shoes clicking against marble, his confident demeanor a performance crafted from 30 years of defending the wealthy. His booming voice echoes off the high ceiling as he waves a stack of child psychology reports in the air like a shield against the damning evidence presented earlier. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Brooks' theatrical voice fills every corner of the room. We must consider the reliability of our star witness, an 8-year-old child with an overactive imagination influenced by too many crime shows and detective stories. He gestures dramatically toward Emma, who sits beside her mother, her blue dress now wrinkled from hours of testimony, her face showing a maturity beyond her years. Brooks approaches the evidence table, lifting Emma's diary, its pages filled with careful drawings of medicine bottles and detailed notes about her stepfather's nighttime activities. He attempts to spin the evidence as the product of a child desperate for attention, his words carefully chosen to plant seeds of doubt, but his usual courtroom swagger falters as he turns each page, seeing the precise times, dates, and measurements recorded in childish handwriting. The defense presents their own expert witness, Dr. Patricia Reynolds, a child psychologist who specializes in cases of parental alienation. She speaks about false memories and the suggestibility of young minds, but under cross-examination, she struggles to explain the video evidence captured by the teddy bear or the accuracy of Emma's documented timestamps that perfectly match hospital records. Brooks' pace is faster now, his confidence cracking as he presents security footage from the hospital showing Dr. Evans working late, saving lives, performing emergency surgeries on children the same nights Emma claimed he was home poisoning her mother, but the prosecution quickly counters with time-stamped videos from the home security system showing Evans arriving home each night precisely at 8:30 p.m. in time to prepare Caroline's evening tea. The courtroom watches as Brooks attempts to discredit Officer Mitchell, suggesting he coached Emma on what to say that fateful night, but his arguments fall flat against the officer's bodycam footage showing the genuine fear in the little girl's eyes as she pushed her warning note through the mail slot, the rawness of that moment captured forever in high definition, revealing a truth no coaching could fabricate. Caroline Thompson grips her wheelchair arms as Brooks suggests she caused her own illness, seeking attention from her busy husband. Her medical records, displayed on screen showing years of unexplained symptoms that began shortly after her marriage to Evans. The defense attorney tries to paint a picture of a troubled woman, enabling a child's fantasies, but the evidence speaks louder than his carefully crafted narrative. Returning to Emma's diary, Brooks attempts one last desperate strategy, suggesting the drawings and notes were added recently to frame Dr. Evans for his wife's mysterious illness, but the prosecution presents forensic analysis of the paper and crayons dating the entries precisely to the nights in question, ink analysis of Evans' own journal showing the same timeline, a devastating correlation that sends whispers through the jury box. Emma sits straighter as Brooks approaches her again, his questions now tinged with frustration, asking how a child could possibly understand the complexities of medical poisoning. Her response leaves the courtroom in stunned silence. I watched Daddy measure everything careful, like he taught me in his home lab. He said a good doctor always measures twice, even poison. Her words, childlike yet chilling in their clarity. Dr. Evans' mask of professional detachment slips further as his stepdaughter continues describing his late-night routine, her testimony filled with innocent details that only a first-hand witness could know. The way he always wore his blue surgical gloves at home just like at work, how he hummed Disney songs while measuring liquids into her mother's tea, the specific cabinet where he hid the special bottles behind his medical books. Brooks' final attempt to discredit the evidence comes as he questions the legitimacy of the teddy bear recordings, suggesting they could have been doctored or manipulated, but the FBI forensic analyst testifies to their authenticity, explaining how the timestamps, metadata, and digital signatures prove the footage is genuine, unaltered, capturing Dr. Evans' methodical attempts to slowly poison his wife. The defense attorney's carefully constructed alternate narrative crumbles as Emma presents one final piece of evidence. She reaches into a teddy bear, pulling out a small voice recorder that had captured Evans' confession the night before his arrest, his whispered words to Caroline as she lay unconscious, thinking he was finally succeeding. "You should have signed the new life insurance policy when I asked. Now I have to wait another month." The recording plays through the courtroom speakers, his cold-calculated voice destroying any remaining doubt. Officer James Mitchell approaches the witness stand, his police uniform pressed and pristine, his badge catching the morning light streaming through the high courtroom windows, but his usual composed demeanor shows cracks as he glances at Emma, remembering the night that changed everything, his 15 years on the force never preparing him for what he discovered at 247 Maple Street. The prosecutor's questions take him back to that autumn night, his voice growing thick with emotion as he describes the tiny finger poking through the mail slot, the desperate whispered plea that made his heart stop. Mitchell explains how he noticed something off about the house despite its perfect exterior, the curtains drawn tight, the silence too complete for a home usually filled with classical music from Dr. Evans' expensive sound system. His testimony continues, describing the moment he found the crumpled paper Emma had pushed through the slot, unfolding it carefully to reveal the crayon drawing that would haunt his dreams, stick figures telling a story no child should have to witness. He holds up the drawing, now preserved in an evidence bag, showing the jury the careful details Emma had included: the measuring cups, the hidden bottles, the times written in purple crayon beside each scene. Mitchell recalls kicking down the door after backup arrived, his description painting a vivid picture of the scene that greeted them: Carolyn Thompson lying motionless on her bed, skin pale as moonlight, barely breathing, while the evidence of Dr. Evans' crimes lay in plain sight on the antique nightstand beside her, the half-empty teacup still warm, the leather notebook filled with clinical observations of his wife's declining health, written in precise doctor's handwriting. His voice catches as he describes finding Emma hiding under her bed, clutching her mother's phone, the device recording everything through its camera lens. The little girl had been gathering evidence for weeks, showing a presence of mind that still amazes him. Mitchell explains how Emma had learned to use the phone's video function by watching crime shows while her stepfather thought she was asleep in bed, her tiny hands steady as she documented his nightly ritual. The courtroom falls silent as Mitchell presents the phone footage showing Dr. Evans in his home office, carefully measuring clear liquids into glass vials, his movements precise, his expression focused like a scientist conducting an important experiment. Emma had captured it all from her hiding spot behind the door, her breathing so quiet her stepfather never noticed her presence, even as she recorded the evidence that would eventually destroy him. Tears threaten to fall as Mitchell recounts how Emma showed him her secret collection of evidence hidden throughout her princess-themed bedroom, the diary stuffed inside her pillowcase containing detailed records of her mother's symptoms, the voice recordings stored on a pink unicorn USB drive she had received for her 8th birthday, the teddy bear with its hidden camera watching silently from her shelf as Dr. Evans poisoned his wife night after night. His testimony turns to the moment Dr. Evans arrived home that night, the surgeon's practiced concern falling away as he realized his stepdaughter had exposed his crimes. Mitchell describes the flash of rage that crossed Evans' face When he saw Emma standing beside the police officer, the mask of caring husband and stepfather cracking to reveal something dark and calculating beneath the prestigious doctor's carefully maintained facade. Mitchell explains how they discovered the hidden camera footage that same night, Emma leading them to her teddy bear, her small hands removing the device she had placed inside, showing them weeks of recorded evidence, her voice strong despite her fear. As she explained how she knew something was wrong, how she had watched her stepfather poison her mother while pretending to care for her, his kindness hiding a calculated plan to claim millions in life insurance. The officer describes the search of Evans' home office, finding the medical journals bookmarked to pages about untraceable poisons, the offshore account statements hidden in a false bottom drawer, the encrypted files on his computer detailing years of research into the perfect method to murder his wife without detection. Mitchell explains how Emma had noticed the pattern in her mother's illness, how she had connected it to her stepfather's late-night activities in the kitchen, her young mind understanding that something sinister was happening in their perfect-looking home. His voice steadies as he concludes his testimony, describing the moment they took Dr. Evans into custody, the renowned surgeon maintaining his innocence. Even as Emma revealed the final piece of evidence, she had gathered the small voice recorder hidden in her favorite stuffed animal, capturing his whispered confession as he thought his wife lay dying. Mitchell looks directly at Evans, now his police training seeing past the expensive suit and professional demeanor to recognize the calculated killer hiding beneath, watching as the doctor's perfect facade finally begins to shatter under the weight of truths spoken through a child's unwavering courage. Dr. Jessica Rivera steps up to the witness stand, her silver hair tied back, precisely her medical examiner's badge gleaming under the courtroom lights, 30 years of experience evident in her confident stride as she prepares to present the scientific evidence that would destroy Dr. Evans' careful plans. She arranges her papers methodically before looking directly at the jury, her expertise about to unravel a murder plot years in the making. The prosecutor hands her the first piece of evidence, a series of toxicology reports. Spanning 3 years, she points to the digital display screen showing chemical analysis of Caroline Thompson's blood samples taken during various hospital visits, the pattern emerging like a deadly constellation, each test revealing trace amounts of different toxins, carefully combined to mimic natural illness. Dr. Rivera explains how Evans chose substances that would break down quickly in the body, leaving little trace. Projected onto the screen, Caroline Thompson's medical history appears alongside chemical breakdowns of the substances found in her preserved teacups, the ones Emma had secretly collected and hidden in her closet. Dr. Rivera explains how the poisons worked together, some targeting the nervous system, others affecting organ function, the combination designed to create symptoms that would appear as a mysterious autoimmune disorder, her voice steady as she describes the medical brilliance behind the murderous plan. The jury leans forward as she presents a timeline matching the toxins found in Caroline's system to the specific medications missing from the hospital pharmacy, her testimony revealing how Evans had used his medical knowledge to select drugs that would interact in ways difficult to detect, the evidence showing a deliberate pattern of poisoning designed to slowly destroy his wife's health while maintaining plausible deniability. Dr. Rivera lifts a sealed evidence bag containing one of Emma's saved teacups, explaining how the residue inside matched perfectly with the chemical compounds found in Caroline Thompson's blood work, the dates corresponding exactly to nights when Emma had recorded her stepfather preparing the specialty, her childish documentation proving invaluable to the scientific investigation. The medical examiner emphasizes how the evidence supports every detail of the little girl's testimony. Evans sits straighter, his clinical gaze fixed on the medical data displayed before him, watching as his carefully constructed plan is dismantled by scientific evidence, his own expertise in toxicology now being used to prove his guilt. Dr. Rivera points out how the specific combination of drugs showed medical knowledge that only a trained physician would possess, the methodical approach revealing both sophisticated planning and chilling deliberation. Turning to her detailed analysis, Dr. Rivera explains how she discovered the pattern in Caroline's symptoms each hospital visit, showing slightly elevated toxin levels that would have gone unnoticed if not for Emma's collection of evidence, the preserved teacups providing the crucial link between the mysterious illness and Evan's calculated administration of poison. She demonstrates how the regular exposure to small doses created a buildup in Caroline's system designed to cause organ failure that would appear natural. The medical examiner presents photographs of the hidden vials found in Evan's office, comparing their contents to the toxins found in Caroline, matching the chemical signatures precisely. She explains how Evans had modified the substances, making them harder to detect in routine blood work. His knowledge as a doctor allowing him to stay one step ahead of standard medical testing until Emma began preserving evidence of his crimes. Carolyn Thompson watches from her wheelchair as Dr. Rivera describes exactly how close she came to death, the medical examiner explaining how the combination of toxins had begun shutting down her major organs, how without Emma's intervention, the poison would have completed its work within days. The jury members exchanged shocked glances as they realized the precision of Evan's murder attempt and the narrow escape made possible by a child's awareness. Emma Thompson returns to the witness stand, her blue princess dress replaced with a simple white sweater and navy skirt, her mother's choice for this final testimony, her small shoulders straight despite the weight of the moment. Prosecutor David Chen approaches slowly, giving her time to settle into the massive chair that seems to swallow her tiny frame, the teddy bear still clutched in her arms, its missing eye facing directly at Dr. Evans. The courtroom falls silent as Emma begins to speak, her voice stronger now than in her first testimony. She describes watching her stepfather through the kitchen door crack every night at exactly 8:30 p.m. after her favorite show ended, how she learned his routine by heart, the way he would change from his hospital clothes into his home clothes, always wearing blue surgical gloves, even though he wasn't at work anymore. Her child mind recognizing that something wasn't right about wearing doctor clothes at home. Chen gently guides her through the timeline as Emma explains how she first became suspicious when her mother started sleeping more and more, the way she would stumble in the morning, like the time she fell down the stairs, and Dr. Evans just wrote in his notebook instead of helping her right away. Emma demonstrates how she learned to hold her mother's phone steady while hiding behind the door, recording everything just like she saw on the crime show her mother loved to watch. Dr. Evans' perfect mask begins to crack as Emma describes his nightly ritual in detail, the exact order he would take things from the special cabinet in his office, how he measured liquids precisely in different sized cups, always cleaning them twice before putting them away. She recalls how he would whisper to himself while working numbers and measurements that she wrote down in her diary, hiding it inside her stuffed unicorn collection where he'd never looked because he said toys were for babies. Tears filled Caroline's eyes as her daughter reveals how she started collecting the teacups after each night, hiding them in her closet behind her winter boots. Emma explains how she knew they were important because her stepfather always washed everything else but forgot about the cups when mommy fell asleep too fast, her small hands gesturing as she describes wrapping them carefully in her old baby blankets so they wouldn't break, knowing somehow they would be important later. The jury watches intently as Emma points to the evidence bags containing her preserved teacups, explaining how she marked each one with the date using her sparkly gel pens, writing the times on the bottom just like her teacher taught them to label their art projects in school. Her methodical approach showing a wisdom beyond her years as she created a record of her stepfather's crimes without fully understanding what she was documenting. Jen projects images of Emma's diary onto the courtroom screen, her childish handwriting recording times, temperatures and colors of the special tea her stepfather made each night, alongside drawings of the bottles he used. She explains how she knew something was wrong when she saw him hide things behind the books in his office, the same way she hid her Halloween candy where mommy couldn't find it, her innocent comparison making several jurors wipe away tears. Emma's voice grows stronger as she describes the night she decided to ask Officer Mitchell for help, how she had watched her mother sleep longer and longer after each cup of tea until the night she wouldn't wake up at all even when Emma tried singing her favorite song, the fear in her voice palpable as she recalls pushing the note through the mail slot praying someone would understand her drawings and help save her mommy from the medicine that wasn't making her better. Dr. Evans' composure finally shatters as Emma reveals her last piece of evidence, reaching into her teddy bear to remove a tiny voice recorder, the same one that captured him in his office late at night, practicing his sad speech for her mother's funeral, planning exactly what he would say to honor his beloved wife. While she still breathed in the next room, his calculated words, now playing through the courtroom speakers, revealing the depths of his deception. The prosecution presents Emma's final drawings, showing the pattern she recognized in her mother's illness, how she got sick every night after drinking the special tea, but seemed better on nights. When Dr. Evans worked late at the hospital, her child mind connecting dots that adults had missed, her crayon illustrations, telling a story of methodical poisoning through the eyes of an 8-year-old who refused to let her mother die. Jen concludes by asking Emma why she decided to start collecting evidence, her answer silencing the courtroom, because mommy always said if you lose something important, write down where you saw it last, and I was losing my mommy a little bit more every night, so I wrote down everything I saw, hoping someone could help me find her again. Dr. Evans finally breaks completely, his hands covering his face, as his stepdaughter's pure truth destroys the last remnants of his carefully constructed lies. Carolyn Thompson wheels herself to the witness stand, her movements still weak from months of poisoning, but her spirit unbroken as she positions her wheelchair where the jury can see her clearly, her once vibrant red hair now streaked with gray, her designer clothes hanging loose on her frail frame, but her eyes burn with determination as she faces her husband, the man who nearly succeeded in killing her. The prosecutor approaches carrying the leather-bound journal found in Dr. Evans' office, opening it to show Caroline her husband's meticulous notes about her declining health. She reads entries dating back 3 years, her voice growing stronger as she recognizes dates that matched her worst symptoms, how he documented her suffering with clinical precision, noting every reaction to his poisoned tea with the detachment of a scientist observing a lab experiment. Memories flood back as she describes the beginning of their marriage, how Evans had insisted on preparing her special tea each night, claiming it would help with her stress and anxiety. She recalls how he would watch her drink it standing in the doorway until she finished every drop, his caring husband routine masking his true intentions. The jury leans forward as she explains how the symptoms began gradually: headaches, dizziness, unexplained bruising that appeared overnight. Caroline holds up her shaking hands, showing the tremors that still plague her, a lasting effect of the poison, her voice breaking as she describes how Evans would explain away each new symptom, convincing her it was all in her head, gaslighting her into believing she was becoming a hypochondriac. She tells the court how he isolated her from friends and family, claiming they were causing her stress, while he slowly poisoned her in the sanctuary of their own home. Tears stream down her face as she recounts the day she discovered Emma's hidden collection of evidence, finding the diary stuffed inside her daughter's favorite unicorn, the crayon drawings showing exactly what Evans did each night while she lay unconscious. Caroline describes the horror of realizing her 8-year-old had been watching silently, protecting her, gathering proof, while she herself had been too weak to recognize the truth. Surveillance footage plays on the courtroom screens, showing Evans in their kitchen preparing the toxic tea. Caroline identifies specific dates when she had been rushed to the emergency room, the timestamps matching perfectly with her daughter's detailed notes in the margin of her school notebook. The prosecution presents bank statements showing how Evans had slowly transferred their joint accounts into his name as her illness progressed, planning for a future where she no longer existed. Her voice strengthens as she describes the life insurance policies Evans had pressured her to sign, documents projected onto screens showing policies worth millions, all taken out in the months before her mysterious illness began. Caroline explains how he had convinced her it was for Emma's future, never suspecting she was signing papers that gave him motive to end her life. The jury watches intently as evidence of his financial plotting unfolds. Caroline wheels closer to the jury box, pulling from her bag the last birthday card Emma had given her just days before Officer Mitchell saved her life. Inside her daughter's childish handwriting reads, "Get better soon, Mommy. I know what makes you sick, and I'm going to stop it." The words now haunting in their innocence, showing how an 8-year-old recognized evil, while adults remained blind to it happening right before their eyes. Medical records flash across the screens as Caroline identifies each hospital visit, matching them to entries in Evan's journal and Emma's diary, creating an undeniable timeline of systematic poisoning. She describes how he would bring her tea even in the hospital, claiming it would help her feel better, her voice shaking as she realizes how many times he had poisoned her in plain sight of medical staff, his reputation as a respected doctor protecting him from suspicion. The prosecution presents the final piece of evidence, security footage from their home, showing Evans practicing his grieving husband performance in front of a mirror while Caroline lay sleeping upstairs, his calculated words about losing his beloved wife revealing the depths of his manipulation. Caroline watches the footage, her hands gripping her wheelchair arms as she sees for the first time the true face of the man she married. Dr. Evans' mask of professional detachment finally crumbles completely as Caroline describes her last memory before Officer Mitchell broke down their door. The taste of almonds in her tea stronger than usual. That night, Evans had grown impatient, tired of waiting for the slow poison to finish its work. Her testimony painting a picture of a man so confident in his perfect prime, he had become careless, never suspecting his own stepdaughter would be his undoing. 1 year after the verdict, Officer James Mitchell stands in the driveway of a bright yellow farmhouse 30 miles from the courthouse, where Dr. Richard Evans received multiple life sentences without possibility of parole. The autumn breeze carries the sound of children's laughter from the backyard where Emma Thompson, now 9 years old, plays with her new puppy, a golden retriever named Hero, her mother's idea of therapy for them both. Mitchell remembers the day of the verdict, how the jury had taken less than 2 hours to find Evans guilty on all counts: attempted murder, domestic abuse, child endangerment, and medical malpractice. The distinguished doctor had remained stone-faced as the judge read out his sentences, but his perfect mask had finally shattered when Emma stood up in the courtroom and spoke the words that would haunt him forever. "I forgive you, Daddy, but I will never forget what you did to Mommy." Caroline Thompson has recovered enough to walk short distances, though she still needs her wheelchair for longer outings, her body slowly healing from years of systematic poisoning. She tends to her garden, now growing herbs and flowers, where once there were only perfectly manicured lawns maintained by her ex-husband's strict standards. Mitchell watches her showing Emma how to plant sunflower seeds, their laughter a stark contrast to the silence that once filled their lives. The media circus that surrounded the trial has finally died down, though true crime documentaries still call requesting interviews. Emma's story having captured the nation's attention, a child saving her mother through crayon drawings and teddy bear recordings, Caroline always declines these requests, protecting her daughter from further exposure, letting her reclaim the childhood that was nearly stolen away by a monster's calculated cruelty. Detective Sarah Chen joins Mitchell on the porch carrying case files that would finally be archived, the evidence against Dr. Death, as the newspapers had called it, Emma's crayon drawings, now preserved in plastic sleeves, her careful notes about medicine bottles and tea times that helped build an airtight case against one of the city's most respected physicians. Chen marvels again at how a child's determination had unraveled what would have been the perfect prime. Inside the farmhouse, Emma's drawings now cover the refrigerator, typical childhood art of flowers, puppies, and rainbows, slowly replacing the careful documentation of her stepfather's crimes. Her diary entries, now filled with stories about school friends and playground adventures, instead of poison measurements and hospital visits. Mitchell notices how she still keeps her teddy bear close, though its missing eye has been repaired, a small reminder of the evidence it once held. Caroline joins them on the porch, walking slowly but steadily, her recovery defying medical expectations. She hands Mitchell and Chen cups of tea with a small smile, the irony not lost on any of them. They watch as Emma teaches Hero new tricks in the yard, her voice carrying clearly through the autumn air. no longer the whisper that had called for help through a mail slot on that fateful night. The case had changed department protocols, hospitals across the country now implementing stricter controls on medication access, regular audits of physician behavior, and new guidelines for investigating unexplained illnesses. Emma's Law, they called it, ensuring that medical professionals could never again use their knowledge to harm those in their care. Her courage creating ripples of change throughout the medical community. Mitchell thinks about the evidence room at the precinct, where Emma's teddy bear sits in storage, its hidden camera, no longer needed, but preserved as a reminder that sometimes the smallest witnesses can reveal the biggest truths. Her childish methods of gathering evidence, now taught in police training sessions, showing how innocence and intuition can spot what professional detectives might miss. As the sun sets over the farmhouse, Emma runs to her mother, hugging her tightly, their bond stronger than ever, having survived a nightmare that could have torn them apart forever. Mitchell watches them together, remembering the night he kicked down their door, finding a desperate child trying to save her mother from a monster hiding behind a doctor's degree and a perfect smile. Caroline invites them to stay for dinner, the kitchen filled with warmth and conversation, so different from the sterile silence of their old home. Emma helps set the table, carefully measuring everything perfectly, habits learned from watching evil that she now uses for love. Mitchell notices how she still writes down recipes in her diary the same way she once documented crimes, but now her notes create joy instead of gathering evidence. The evening ends with Emma showing them her latest art project, a family tree painted in bright colors, showing just her and her mother surrounded by friends who became family, their branches growing strong and new. While the darkness of the past fades away like shadows in the morning sun, sometimes Mitchell thinks, watching Emma laugh freely at last, the most powerful evidence isn't found in courtrooms or case files, but in the resilience of a child who refused to let evil win.